My name is Nina, and I'm 28. The last time I saw my father, I was 18, standing on the porch with a backpack and shaking hands, begging him to open the door. Tonight, I walked through the marble lobby of the Maison Hotel downtown, wearing heels he never saw me reach. A gold banner above the ballroom read, "Congratulations, Director Charles Houston, 40 years of excellence." The air smelled of salmon and stale champagne. Inside, they applauded, toasted him, laughed at stories I'd been left out of. I stood in the doorway for a moment, just outside the double doors. My reflection stared back at me in the glass. The same strong jaw he used to say came from his side of the family. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the envelope. Yellowed, creased in the center. My handwriting in blue ink. The letter I'd written the night I left, the one they'd never let anyone read. I hadn't come to ruin his party. That would be too easy. No, I came because silence had protected him long enough. Because every lie he'd told about me had been accepted as fact. Because 10 years ago he'd said, "She ran away. She's never coming back." Well, I came back and brought the proof. The band inside began playing soft jazz. My cue. I slipped the letter back into my coat, lifted my chin, and pushed open the doors. People turned, their faces changing from polite curiosity to frozen recognition. Glasses stopped in midair. The toast stopped mid-sentence. And in the center of it all, standing next to a giant collage of student awards and smiling class portraits, was my father. His smile faded the moment he saw me, and I smiled back. There was a time when my father had called me his pride and joy. At school board dinners and parent-teacher nights, I was the golden girl. Valedictorian, athlete, advanced classes, flute solos at winter concerts. He would walk the halls of Houston High, his school, with his hand on my shoulder, as if I were his proof of greatness. That's my Nina, future lawyer. Maybe Harvard, if they're lucky, but behind closed doors, his praise had rules. I had to perform always. Any grade below an A was met with silence and cold eyes. If I missed a student council meeting because of a rehearsal, he called it a waste of potential. The year I turned 17, I began writing plays in secret, short scenes, mostly about mothers who left and daughters who stayed. One day, my drama teacher entered a play in a regional competition without telling me. I won. The iridescent school emailed me. Full scholarship to the intensive pre-college summer program. I awaited 2 days to show it to my father. I wanted to choose the right words. We were sitting at the kitchen table, eating spaghetti. I said, "It's theater, but it's serious. It's real. It's what I want." He didn't look at me. He just twirled his fork and said, "I didn't raise you to chase dreams." Then he pushed back his chair and walked away from the table. The silence after that conversation was colder than any punishment. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just erased the possibility. From that day on, I felt like I was living in someone else's version of myself. I kept practicing quietly away from home. I filled out my own FAFSA. I worked shifts at a bookstore under a different name so it wouldn't show up on his taxes. By the spring of my senior year, I had a dorm room in New York and a train ticket. I left him a letter, a handwritten page. "I love you. I need space to think. I'll come home someday." I thought that would be enough. I thought he would be angry, maybe even scared. But I never imagined that this man, the one who used to cheer the loudest at my concerts, would choose to burn the entire bridge rather than just meet me halfway. I returned on Sunday afternoon as promised. The train ride home was silent. I imagined his face, perhaps worried, perhaps softened by the space. I rehearsed what I would say. "I'm sorry I scared you. I just needed air. But I'm not giving up on this." But when I got to the front porch, my key wouldn't open the door. At first I thought it was stuck. I jiggled it, tried again. Then I noticed the porch light was off. It was always on when someone was home. I rang the doorbell, knocked, waited. Nothing. I called his cell phone, which went straight to voicemail. Then I tried Mom's, which was also off. Then I looked to my right and saw it. My suitcase, sitting neatly next to the porch swing, closed, labeled a forgotten donation. On top of it was a plastic bag containing my birth certificate, my social security card, and a yellow post-it note. "You've made your choice. Good luck." My hands went cold. I sat on the steps for hours. I couldn't stop staring at the door, as if I blinked it would open. It never did. Neighbors walked by with their dogs, and I saw it in their eyes. Pity, disgust, confirmation. They knew. 2 days later, I collapsed on my friend Anna's couch and logged onto Facebook. And there it was. A status from my aunt that had been posted the same day I left. Please pray for our family. Nina ran away. She left a hateful note, and we fear she is with someone dangerous. The comments were endless. Sorry praying. She always seemed troubled. Kids these days. He made it seem like I had run off with an older man, that I had left in anger, that I was unstable. My mother blocked my number. My drama teacher stopped responding to emails. A week later, my college acceptance was withdrawn after my transcript was marked incomplete. I hadn't just been abandoned, I had disappeared, and no one, not a single person who had once called themselves family, had ever asked me what really happened. The first night I slept on Anna's couch, I cried into a sweatshirt I had used as a pillow. By the third night, I had learned to cry quietly. I got a job as a waitress at a 24-hour diner on 6th Avenue, mostly late shifts. The kind of place where the coffee never runs out and no one asks why your eyes are puffy. I scrubbed floors, worked double shifts, and enrolled in community college courses on a payment plan. No family, no FAFSA, no support, just me, a hand-me-down laptop, and a bank account that never went above $50 for more than 2 days. I kept my head down, didn't tell anyone where I was from. When people asked about my parents, I'd say, they're back east. Technically true. Emotionally, they were gone. What hurt more than the silence was how easily everyone assumed I no longer existed. No one came looking. No one even posted a picture asking if I was okay. It was like I was never part of their story in the first place. But little by little, I built something. I took acting classes at night, worked as a lighting technician on the weekends for off-Broadway plays. Eventually, someone read a monologue I wrote and said, "This isn't just good, this is yours." I wrote a one-woman show called Inheritance. It was about a girl who is erased by her own family. It ran for 3 nights at an experimental theater in Brooklyn. Only 10 people showed up, but one of them was a columnist for the New York Times working on a story about family estrangement. She asked to interview me. I said yes. The article was called What We Leave Behind When We Leave Home. My father's name was never mentioned, but I know he read it because 3 days after it was published, someone tried to reset my email password. I was unfazed. By then, I had moved into a small apartment of my own. I had friends who knew my real story, a life I had built brick by brick. And yet, the silence of the house remained the loudest sound in my life. It started with a Facebook message from my cousin Marina. We hadn't spoken since I was 17. She'd always been the wild one. Bleached blonde highlights. She broke curfews. She was more grounded than free. But that night she sent just 6 words. I found something. It's about you. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the screen like it was a ghost. 3 days later, curiosity overcame self-protection. I called her. Her voice was choked. I'm sorry I never got back to you. I believed what you said. We all did. She told me she was helping her dad clean out the attic. Boxes of old tax returns, musty holiday decorations, old stuff from when her mom taught kindergarten. At the bottom of one box, wrapped in a Ziploc bag, was a sealed envelope. It had my name on it, my handwriting blue ink, slanted script that I hadn't used in years. She opened it, read it, and realized that everything she'd been told was a lie. I love you. I need space. I'll be back on Sunday. No mention of anger, no threats. No disappearances, just a scared, respectful 18-year-old asking for time. Marina said her father tried to downplay it. Oh, that old thing. But she knew. He knew. They all knew. My father didn't just lie. He took the truth, my actual words, and hid them in a dusty attic as something shameful. And then he replaced them with a version that made him the victim. That night, Marina emailed me a scanned copy of the letter. I printed it out, smoothed out the creases, and stared at it for a long time. It was like finding the last piece of a puzzle of a life I'd been made to forget. Not long after, the invitation to the retirement party appeared on social media. A big celebration. Local school board, teachers, families, community leaders, a tribute to a legacy of integrity. I didn't cry when I saw it. I didn't scream. I just looked at the letter in my hands and thought, you buried the truth. I'm going to dig it up in front of everyone. I didn't decide right away. The letter sat on my desk for a week, next to an unlit candle and a cold cup of coffee I never drank. Every time I looked at it, I thought of the silence that followed. The missed birthdays. The college I never attended. The years I spent rebuilding something that should never have been broken. Then I saw the RSVP form. It was posted on the school district's website. Join us in celebrating the retirement of Principal Charles Houston. 40 years of service, leadership, and family. Family. That word felt like a challenge. I used my middle name, Elin, to RSVP online. A guest, no meal preference, no +1. I didn't need backup, I had the truth. I booked a flight, borrowed a blazer from a friend, and packed two things, a scanned copy of my letter and a clipping from the article I'd published in the New Yorker last year. I hadn't rehearsed a speech. This wasn't about revenge or theatrics. This was about reality, raw, unpolished, undeniable. He'd built a career on discipline and image, on molding other people's children. He'd been the man with the handshake and the clipboard and the mural full of smiling children. But he'd left out one photo. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was just going to walk in, look him in the eye, and remind everyone in that room. You can't rewrite history just because you're the only one left to tell it. I hadn't seen my mother in more than a decade. Not since the night I stood on our porch with shaking hands and tear-stained eyes, begging her to open the door. She didn't come. But 2 hours before the gala, I was there again. Same porch, same doorstep. The paint was peeling now, the bushes overgrown. The wind carried the scent of someone else's dinner. I rang the bell. No answer. I was about to leave when the door opened slightly. She looked older, thinner, grayer. Her shoulders hunched as if life had been pressing down on her for years. Her eyes fell on me, and for a moment I saw something flash. Recognition. Guilt. Relief. Nina, she whispered, as if the name hurt in her throat. I asked her a question. Did you know? She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't need to. She went outside, pulled her cardigan tighter around her chest, and sat on the porch swing. I stood. I needed to stand. I found the letter, I said. The real one. The one I wrote before I came home. The one he hid. She closed her eyes, a slow, silent nod. I wanted to come after you, she said. I really did. Why didn't you? She looked down the street. He said you were unstable, that you'd hooked up with an older man, that we needed to protect ourselves, that if I got in touch it would only make things worse. I looked at her. And you believed that? I believed him, she whispered, because I was afraid of him too. In that moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt something colder, detached. Not hate, just distance. She wasn't the villain, but she wasn't innocent either. She was the silence that kept his life intact. The ballroom smelled of expensive wine and overcooked salmon. Laughter echoed from the crystal chandeliers. People hugged, posed for pictures in front of a giant poster that read, "Celebrating Director Charles Houston, a legacy of integrity." I stood near the back, close enough to hear the clinking of glasses, far enough away to remain invisible until they called out to me. 40 years of service, a mentor, a role model, a father figure to so many. He walked onto the stage in a tailored navy suit, smiling the way only men with unassailable legacies smile. The crowd stood, cheered. Even the mayor was there. I let the applause die down before I moved. One step, then another. People turned as I approached, eyes wide, some faces lit with recognition, others with discomfort. And then he saw me. Charles Houston froze. The color drained from his face as if someone had pulled a plug. I didn't look away. I reached for the microphone. He leaned toward me and whispered, "Nina, not here." But I was already speaking. "Hi, I'm Nina Houston, his daughter." Gasps, murmurs. Fork stopped mid-bite. "I haven't been in this room or this town for 10 years. That's because 10 years ago, my father told everyone that I ran away, that I was angry, that I disowned him. He told you that I left a note. I took the envelope from my coat. This is that note. I read it slowly, clearly, so no one could pretend they hadn't heard. I love you. I need space. I'll be back on Sunday. I looked around at the crowd. Familiar faces, teachers, neighbors, my old principal. Does that sound like someone who ran away? Silence. The kind that settles down your spine. Then chairs shifting. Uneasy glances. A few people glanced at Charles. A woman covered her mouth with her hand. He stepped forward. Nina, that's not the whole story. I held up my hand. No. You've told that story for 10 years. This is mine. A voice from the crowd. Is that why she disappeared? Another. I remember praying for her. Then Marina stood up. She held up a phone showing a scan of the original letter. He hid it, she said. For 10 years, he made us believe something that wasn't true. I watched it happen, the unraveling. His reputation, stitched together so carefully, unraveling thread by thread. Someone whispered, "What else did he lie about?" His jaw clenched. His hands shook. He looked at me like I'd lit the match. But I hadn't burned anything. I just brought the truth. And truth doesn't whisper. It echoes. Once the first crack appears, the rest quickly falls apart. He tried to keep smiling, tried to save the moment, waving his hand as if I were just an emotional interruption. But the room had changed. People no longer looked at him with admiration. They looked at him like a stranger. One of his former colleagues, Ms. Loren, an assistant principal for 20 years, stood up and said, "I always wondered why you closed the drama department so suddenly." Another man, a former career counselor, added, "You told us she had a breakdown, that she was dangerous." I said nothing. I didn't need to. They were doing it for me now. Even the school superintendent, the one who had honored him 10 minutes earlier, stepped back from the podium and crossed his arms. He wasn't smiling either. Then someone near the back said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You made her disappear to protect your image." My father didn't speak. He looked around the room and saw that the empire he had built wasn't made of bricks. It was made of borrowed faith. And belief, once cracked, is no longer sustainable. He finally stepped away from the microphone. No apology, no explanation, just a silent retreat to his desk, where even my mother refused to meet his eyes. The slideshow continued behind him. Pictures of science fairs, graduations, handshakes, award ceremonies. But no one else was watching because history had changed, and so had the man. I didn't stay for the cake. As people whispered and plates were quietly cleared away, I slipped out the side door and into the cool night air. The sky was a deep navy blue, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe deeply into my lungs. Marina followed me a few minutes later. She didn't say anything right away. She just stood next to me on the sidewalk, as if we were waiting for a bus that wasn't going to come. Finally, she said, "You were brave." I shook my head. No, I was late. We stood there in silence, the hum of traffic in the background, the gala muffled by the thick walls of the hotel. It felt like standing outside a funeral, except no one had died. They had just been seen for who they truly were. "I guess I spent years just wanting someone to believe me," I said. And I realized I didn't need belief. I needed the silence to stop. Marina nodded. "You ended it." "No," I said. "I got it back." I looked at the envelope in my hand. The letter that should never have disappeared. The words that should never have been buried. I didn't need to give it to anyone. I didn't need my father to read it. He had already heard every word, and so had they. I turned to Marina and smiled. He built his legacy in silence. I got it back. Then we walked away. Not as exiles, not as victims, but as women who no longer live in someone else's story. Nina had been so committed throughout her journey. What would you do in her shoes? If you liked this story, like this video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories.